Welcome to the next episode of Great War Story. I've called this one Belgian Holiday August 1914, although I was tempted to call it What I Did in My Summer Holidays. Remember Belgium, the Rep of Belgium, and bravo Belgian, no thoroughfare to the German bully. So let's think about places to go on vacation. Let's say it's 79 AD, and wouldn't it be nice to go for a visit down to the Bay of Naples in August? Nice refreshing sea air. There it is, it looks rather gorgeous. 79 AD. Vesuvius, Pompeii, perhaps not the best place to go for a vacation in August. Okay, let's try something else. Rome, everybody loves to go to Rome. So August of 410 AD, let's go on vacation in Rome. Let's see, the Goths have chosen to go on vacation in Rome, and they're having rather too good a time, so I think in terms of places you could go on vacation, 410 AD in August in Rome, no, that's definitely a place you'd want to avoid. Okay, how about the United States? Let's go for a visit to Washington, D.C. We can see the lighthouse, August of 1814. Surely that'll be okay. No, because the War of 1812 is still raging, and the British land a bunch of Marines off the Potomac, and they march in and burn the White House. So, okay, I think we've found our third candidate for places not to vacation during August. And the fourth, and probably most obvious one of all, is August of 1914. Do not go on holiday to Belgium, because the entire weight of the German army is going to be aimed straight at Belgium with the intention of doing an end run, a right hook around the French defences, and to smash them down and end the war decisively. And even though the plan didn't actually work out quite as the Germans intended, it didn't help Belgium very much. So what did my Aunty Connie do in August of 1914? You have guessed it, she went on holiday to Belgium. And fortunately, I have her diary covering these events. This is her handwriting, and she wrote Belgian experiences July 29th to August 15th, 1914. Now, Aunty Connie was my great-auntie. She was the elder sister of my New Zealand grandfather who went to war in 1914. I've made quite a few episodes about him. His elder sister lived in London, and she has featured in the episode I made about Thompson the dentist, when I was discussing the mystery of how that guy Drake came to be present with my grandfather in Egypt, and then somehow or other later wind up signing the autograph book of my Aunty Connie. So that's who we're talking about. And most of the rest of this episode is really just me reading out her diary and illustrating it with some pictures and perhaps giving a little bit of commentary here and there. So on July 29th, 1914, she left London, and you can see she went by train and then boat and train and then finally picked up by car. Left Charing Cross Station in London at 8:50 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. for Poppering via Calais and Hazebrouck. At Dover, there were 2 destroyers lying in the harbour, and 2 warships were to be seen steaming along out in the channel. The sea was as smooth as possible. There was some talk about the possibility of a war, but nothing was looked on as very serious. And the above photo shows my best imagination of storm clouds on the horizon. And in fact, this is my photo, and it really gave you a sense of utter disaster, that view, because that's not cloud, that's smoke. That's one of those awful Southern California hillfires that rips through and burns down lots of houses, and a number of houses up on the hill just behind our place was in fact destroyed by that fire. So yeah, it really gave me a sense of doom looming upon you and rapidly approaching, probably pretty similar perhaps to the storm clouds of 1914. At Hazebrouck, Jean and Marie van der Pitt met me, and we went into in the motor to Poppering. You'll notice they call cars at this time motors. We went in the motor to Poppering, getting across the frontier without even having to open our luggage. We arrived at their house about 3:30 p.m, if not a little before. Now, I've tried to identify who these people are. From context, I'm pretty sure Jean is the mother. She sometimes calls her later Madame. And I guess Marie is probably the daughter. Aunty Connie would have been in her late 20s at this time, so if I had to guess, I'd guess Marie's probably a contemporary of hers. Sad to say, I have no information whatsoever about who these people were. I tried to find them on Ancestry in this location and didn't have any luck, and I don't know why my Aunty Connie was visiting them or how she knew them. We had noticed some cannon and Red Cross apparatus at Hazebrouck, as well as a very few soldiers. The photo above on the right does actually show the main square of Hazebrouck. These are some old soldiers parading there in 1917. The photo on the bottom right is just a random photo I found of some French artillery. Thursday, July 30th. Many rumours of war, but we considered Belgium entirely safe. In the afternoon, as Monsieur Van de Pitt was going to Comines, which is just north of Armentières. Armentières, of course, is where my grandfather got shot through the shoulder. That was the episode that I called Massacre of the Otago Infantry, and for reasons I don't fully understand, that one is absolutely taken off on YouTube. It's now had about 3,000 views. I think my second best is just a bit over 800. I do hope you'll go back and look at some of my other episodes as well. So anyway, in the afternoon, as Monsieur Van de Pitt was going to Comines, he offered to take us into Ypres so that we could walk around there and meet them later. It is a lovely town with a beautiful town hall. Yes, indeed, doesn't that look like a grand, lovely building? Sadly, not long after she wrote this, that's what the building looked like in Ypres, utterly smashed. And here's another photo on the left of it. You can see, even got the caption, that's from November of 1914, and the church that was in the background behind it is, well, there's not an awful lot left of that either. And there's an aerial shot of Ypres. The town was utterly devastated. And outside the Ypres ramparts flows a river covered with water lilies. I'm sure it was quite gorgeous, and I'm sure it didn't look anything like this photo from the Australian War Memorial Museum showing Australian troops gathered outside the ramparts. I suspect the ramparts are a lot more damaged and, well, there's not many water lilies left anymore either, are there? Friday, July 31st. Early in the morning we watched the soldiers going away by train to guard the Belgian frontiers. Rumours of war between Germany and Russia and Germany and France reached us, but nothing was confirmed. We were afraid I should have to come home at once, but Monsieur Van de Pitt telegraphed through to Paris to ask if it would be safe for me to stay, and they answered that there was no necessity whatever to leave Belgium. Yes, trust the authorities. The authorities know what's good for you. If they say Belgium is safe in July 31st, 1914, of course it's safe. And these actually are Belgian soldiers from 1914 in the photo. And yes, they really did use dogs to pull along. I'm not actually sure what they're pulling, but yes, the Belgian military really did use dog carts like that. Many strong motors and horses were taken for the Belgian army. Saturday, August 1st. Telegraph lines from Paris cut off. News of war confirmed, but we hear very little. Sunday, August 2nd. Madame Van de Pitt went into Brussels to see her son, but was unable to see him. He is in the King's Own Regiment, the Grenadiers, and is among Belgium's picked men. 2 more classes have to go today. Telegraph for passport form and birth certificate in morning. Now, when they talk about classes, they're talking about mobilization. Not everybody gets mobilized at the same time. People are divided into classes, so they will say, okay, this class must report for duty now. Okay, the next day, this class must report now. And this uniform on the right, they don't look very military, the guy's dressed up in it now, but that is in fact the uniform of the Belgian Grenadiers in 1914. And I actually thought that that was surely just their dress uniform. They wouldn't actually go to war in it. But here we have the departure of the Grenadiers, 6th of August 1914. And, well, you can see even in the illustration they've got a couple of those dogs pulling a cart again. And it really does seem to be the case that, at least in August, those were the clothes that they went to war in. It looks like they're fighting in the Napoleonic Wars or something, doesn't it? However, there's a photo of Grenadiers not very long after in 1914, and you can see they've changed their hats at least so they don't stick up quite so obviously when they're in trenches. So I guess it didn't take them long to realise that those huge hats, the bearskin hats, were perhaps not the most suitable for World War I. August 3rd. The chauffeur has had to go with another motor, this one being 15 horsepower instead of 20 horsepower. but orders are given that this one must be kept ready in case it is wanted. Here end our motor trips. Greatest excitement prevails and sympathy is entirely with France. There is the Auto World Brussels, which shows you what some of the planes would have looked like during this time period. August 4th. War. And that's a cutting I did from, well, a scan of her diary, so that's her handwriting. War. Germany has violated Belgium's neutrality, and England is said to be coming to Belgium's aid. More soldiers went off this morning. The people are as angry as can be at this outrageous violation of their land. We hear that an attack has been made on Liège, or Luik, as the Flemings call it. Liège was actually very heavily defended. It was surrounded by these quite modern fortifications with massive concrete bunkers and heavy guns and all of the rest. If the Belgians chose to defend it instead of just rolling over, it would be a tough fight for the Germans. Gérard Léman was in command, and he had in fact had thousands of workers digging further trenches, linking up the fortifications, and making Belgium an even tougher nut. A Belgian politician had said, "Oh, but wouldn't that endanger our neutrality?" And, he ignored them. When the Germans came to Liège and demanded that they be granted passage, he gave one of the all-time famous responses, perhaps not as famous as some of the other brief replies, but frayez-vous le passage, which is, if you want to come through, fight your way through, because I'm not letting you through. And, so the Battle of Liège did indeed happen. The German war plan called for them to capture the town in 2 days. It took them, if I remember right, 10 or 12 days, something like that, which considerably delayed the Schlieffen plan and may have been crucial for giving the French time to shore up their lines and for more British troops to arrive in Europe as well. And it wasn't, in fact, until the Germans brought up their really heavy artillery, call them bunker busters if you like, that they were actually able to smash open those fortifications. They suffered really heavy casualties trying to storm them until they brought up the big guns. Now back to the diary, August 5th. Letter registered with birth certificate and passport form came. Return form at once filled in for our doctor's signature. You can tell from this that passports aren't quite the same that we use now. This idea that they're these little books, but it seems here that passport means something subtly different. Liège still stands a tax maidenate, and the Germans are wonderfully surprised, as they actually expected Belgium to let them through without any resistance whatsoever. England has declared war on Germany, and Italy will not fight for the Triple Alliance. August 6th, Thursday. News of the Battle of Longwy won by the French. Now, I had to look this one up. It was basically another fortified area held by the French, and I believe there were some German cavalry formations that tried to bypass them and did receive quite a mauling from the hands of the French. So this was not just wartime propaganda. It would be quite several weeks later that the Germans would finally capture this location. Russia is advancing, and Serbia repelling Austria. Well, today we'd call it Serbia, but this is the spelling my great-auntie used. Monsieur Van der Pitt says, with greatest emphasis, Les Anglais cinglant la mer du Nord. Now, my French is next to non-existent, so I had quite a lot of difficulty working out exactly what he was saying here. Well, Les Anglais, la mer du Nord, that part's fairly easy. The English, the North Sea, the Sea of the North. But the verb there, cinglant, what exactly does it mean? Well, it could just mean sail. Les Anglais sail on the North Sea, but that didn't exactly make sense to me. Another potential translation of the word could be lash or whip. The English whip the North Sea. None of it entirely makes sense to me. Maybe it's some sort of equivalent of, England rules, Britannia rules the waves. I really don't know. And, carrying on. Les Anglais cinglant la mer du Nord. And we all sang God Save the King, the Marseillaise, and the Brabançon. The Brabançon is the Belgian national anthem. Now, recently I was listening on YouTube to a version of the French national anthem that had the lyrics translated underneath. I had no idea when you translate the lyrics of the French national anthem, just how incredibly violent and aggressive they are. So there's something along the lines of, well, this is a translation, let's go, children of the fatherland, the day of glory has arrived. Against us tyranny's bloody flag is raised. Against us tyranny's bloody flag is raised. In the countryside, do you hear the roaring of these fierce soldiers? They come right to our arms to slit the throats of our sons, our consorts. And then the verse. Grab your weapons, citizens. Form your battalions. Let us march. Let us march. May their blood soak our fields. They said, march on, march on, form battalions, let's go and slaughter them so their blood soaks into the fields. Well, under normal circumstances, I'd find a national anthem as aggressive as this to be, well, a bit strange under normal peacetime settings. You're having a exchange of embassies and, the ambassador for some country arrives and you're singing a song about bloody tyrants and slaughtering them all before they can cut the throats of your family. But I guess in the context of what we're talking about right here, I guess the lyrics actually kind of make sense. The Germans are attacking, we do have to form our battalions and so on. So in that sense, I guess, well, it does kind of make sense, but I have to say I will never look at or listen to the French national anthem in quite the same way again. Now that is the Belgian king. In the evening, the excitement was intense when we heard that Germany had sent an ultimatum to Italy. They are mad. 2 German warships sunk and 1 other taken by England. Now again, I always wondered, is this just wartime propaganda? But Germany had already lost 2 ships. One was just some kind of torpedo boat that I just think ran aground and sank. But there had actually been some combat and a German mine layer had been sunk, so not just pure propagandistic exaggeration. They are so proud of the Belgian soldiers and above all the King, Albert I, who was head of the army. August 7th, Friday. French in Alsace. Great German losses. It appears that they had no idea in the German ranks that they were fighting against Belgium, and were most astonished when they heard that. They thought France had declared war on Germany, and they were fighting French soldiers on Belgian territory, on the ground that France had violated Belgium's neutrality. English troops here under General French. Rumour that 10 German warships have been sunk by English fleet. Russia steadily advancing. August 8th, Saturday, and August 9th, Sunday. It is said that Germany has asked for 24-hour truce to gather up her dead and wounded, but the general feeling is against it here in Poppering at least. No further news. Truce for 2 hours only. Germany, as expected, really wanted time to prepare another attack. Germans reported to have lost again. And this is Poppering just a little bit later. This is when the British, or the BEF, the British Expeditionary Force, starts to arrive in Belgium in greater numbers. They're going to be, well, actually they won't be driven back from Poppering. Poppering will remain in British territory. It's one of the, Belgian territory. It's one of those tiny slivers of Belgium that the Germans never did manage to capture throughout the entire war. August 10th. News of yesterday confirmed, and Germans are said to have retired from Liège. Well, that's completely untrue. In fact, maybe they were just bringing up their big guns and giving a bit of a break from trying to storm it by coup de main. And the French are in Alsace at Mulhausen. And that also is not an exaggeration. I had to pull up this map of the early events of World War I, and if you look at the very bottom of this map, it's not Mulhausen, it's Mulhause, but yes, indeed, the French had advanced into what was at that time German territory. Alsace-Lorraine, by the way, if you go back in European history, had belonged to France until the Franco-Prussian War, and in 1870, as part of the German victory, they had forced France to cede that territory to Germany, so it had particular importance to France to march into it. As you can see on the map, the French advance was stopped shortly after, and they were thrown back. But at this time, it is entirely true that France was advancing into German territory. August the 11th. Letter from home, dated 8th of August 1914, saying the schools reopen tomorrow. We all went to the town hall to get passports and had to be measured and described on the passport paper, signed by the burgomaster. Had to show birth certificate. Oh, and that picture, by the way, is the town hall of Poppering. August 12th. Passport signed by French consular agent at Ypres, but letter must come from home with passport news as regards signed form. More English soldiers said to have passed by Mont des Cats during the night, as well as French artillery. Went for walk and saw people making real Valenciennes lace. The poor people are coming to Monsieur van der Pitt for bread, which he is giving them. And that third little paragraph was such a strange one. So here we have her, getting her passport ready to travel and evacuate Belgium. There's news of all the soldiers arriving, conflict left, right and centre, and in the middle of it, just this, typical thing you do on a holiday. Oh yeah, and I went around to see the people working on lace. And Belgian lace was quite famous at the time, and I really liked this piece I managed to find online, because you can actually see it's actually the Ypres Town Hall, the one that I showed you the photos of that got absolutely smashed in 1914. August 13th. Had to wait for news regarding trains to Hazebrouck. They came for the motor, but as it is a light one, have not taken it, so we may get through safely tomorrow. At any rate, we will try. And that is actually a Belgian car from this time period. August 14th, Friday. Up at 6 a.m. to finish packing and seeing what to take and what to leave behind. Union Jack from home arrived at 7 a.m. and letter with little news 9 a.m. Set off at 10 a.m. with Monsieur van der Pitt, Marie and Jean, and Monsieur Velke's chauffeur. No trouble till we came to the frontier, where we had to stop, and they wondered who I was. Monsieur van der Pitt very well known, and as he explained matters, they did not even open my luggage. So the French, naturally enough, are guarding the Belgian frontier pretty tightly at this point. So you'd think I'd be able to work out who this Monsieur van der Pitt is, given that he's clearly a quite rich and influential person in the region, but, well, maybe one day I'll be able to identify him. They told us we must go to the Mairie of Bochep for permission for the motor to go on, and when this was done, we came back to the douane. The douane is like the customs house, and showed the permission, and went along another road by Mont des Cats. We had one of two stoppages, and on coming to Godwersveld, the whole population, including mayor and corporation, turned out to see us and to get some news. Well, you can imagine everybody wants to know, and here's somebody who's just driven into France from Belgium. What's going on? What have you heard? What have you seen? At last we got away, but only to stop several times to show our passports to the soldiers guarding the roads at one place. A railway crossing, we had to wait, and there they were no little worried about a large grey motor which had come from Hazebrouck direction, but on seeing the soldiers they had turned and fled. There was one more stoppage just before entering Hazebrouck. On reaching the station, we found there would be no train till 3:30 p.m, so we went to the Grand Place and had dinner in a hotel there. The Grand Place is this town square, and that building with all the columns to the right is probably the hotel she's referring to. So, while drinking our coffee outside afterwards, we had rather an amusing chat with a French soldier who was not altogether sober. At Hazebrouck station, passports had again to be shown. In the Grand Place, just outside the Hotel de Ville, was a motor with the front glass and one window smashed, let alone other gruesome things in it. A chauffeur had been shot for not stopping when ordered by the soldiers. The grey motor contained 2 German captains, now detained. Said goodbye to Hazebrouck most unwillingly, as we had been happy, but it was best to return. Reached Calais at 6 p.m, but had to go on to Boulogne, as Calais harbour is full of mines, it is said. An English gentleman offered to see me safely through, and I accepted his kind offer. We saw a torpedo boat come in to Calais harbour. A little after 11 p.m. we left for Boulogne. On the way, we compared past wars with the present one, discussed Germany's resources and tactics compared with ours, and criticised the Kaiser and the Crown Prince. If they could only have heard it. And the photo on the left is Boulogne harbour around about this time period. August 15th, and the photo on the left before I go on that is actually an illustration of British troops arriving at Boulogne during this exact time period. August 15th. We arrived at Boulogne at 1:20 a.m, went to the hotel and sat in armchairs and read newspapers and had some coffee. At 4 a.m. we breakfasted and set off for the boat, which we boarded at 5 a.m. Here passports were necessary again, and we had all to declare our nationality. Many Americans were crossing, and 2 members of the Royal Flying Corps, who had been over with an aeroplane and were returning for another. They refused to tell where they had landed, but said our troops were there. 10 boatloads had landed that night, and we saw the last just coming in as... And the diary stops. And much to my despair and disappointment, that is literally all I have. A few years ago, we got copies of only these few entries from Aunty Connie's diary. I would dearly love to see the rest and recover it all. I've tried asking around family members, but so far, nobody seems to know who's got it or where it is. I just hope it hasn't been lost and it turns up one day, because I really, really want to see the rest of her diary. What a place to stop. But all the same, what a wonderful primary resource of what conditions were like in Belgium at exactly the time when the war broke out. And of course, Poppering, although it remained behind the front lines, Ypres, which was a little bit further to the east, really bore a huge brunt of all the damage in the war. But nevertheless, Poppering, being not that far away behind the lines, it had casualty clearing stations, military hospitals there. There are 2 military cemeteries filled with graves, and I've seen photos of war damage, long-range artillery that hit some of the buildings. Not nearly the kind of damage I showed you for Ypres, but Poppering was by no means unscathed, but it did remain in Allied hands, although very close to the front lines. And that's all I have for you today. I wish I had more, to be perfectly honest. So I'm going to say good evening to you. But don't forget to get yourself a radio from my grandfather's radio shop. Well, assuming you can get a time machine and go back to Wellington in the 1930s. But if you could, he would be your man.